Why is Russell Brand selling people plastic necklaces to protect them from Wi-Fi?
All of the signals, corruptible and corrupting. Luckily, I wear this magical amulet.
Why is Raw Beauty Kristi now part of a homeschooling co-op which is explicitly anti-LGBTQIA+? And sadly, this is not just a USA thing, this is happening all over the world. Even one of my patrons pointed this out in Poland, with Edita Gierniak telling her choir they can't even carry phones near her because they emit waves that are harmful to her health.
Huh?
Why is there such a strong correlation between people being interested in health and wellness, then turning into this weird alt-right, anti-vax, anti-science, anti-government conspiracy theory sort of mindset? Well, we're getting into it today in this very brief video, don't look at the timestamp, because this has been something which has been taking up my mind for many months, even years at this point. The ad-free uncensored director's cut of this video is already available on Patreon, because yes, there is always more to get into. What the hell is happening? Let's set things straight because you may be confused with the terminology crunchy to alt-right, and what kind of video essayist would I be if I didn't illuminate the possibilities? Crunchy is defined by Urban Dictionary, the most definitive dictionary out there. Adjective used to describe persons who have adjusted or altered their lifestyle for environmental reasons. Crunchy persons tend to be politically strongly left-leaning and may additionally, but not exclusively, categorize as vegetarians, vegan, ecotarians, conservationalists, environmentalists, neo-hippies, tree huggers, nature enthusiasts, etc. Also used to describe establishments where alternative foods and products are sold, i.e. natural food stores. And you may be saying, Bryony, isn't that you? And yes, except for the only reason that I go to health food stores is to get vegan marshmallows. For full transparency, this is where I sit on the political compass, and yes, I do have a test that you can take down below, so you can do that after the video, because I put so much work into this, you better watch it all the way through. So what does this have anything to do with the alt-right? Let's try and define the alt-right super fast, even though Britannica seems to believe that it was only a thing in the 2010s, ending on the January the 6th, insurrection in 2021, but I think that we all know that this thing is global, and it has never gone away. Maybe they're just openly identifying as Nazis now. But anyway, there is a definition I can go to. The Cambridge Dictionary defines alt-right as people with extreme conservative views, including extreme views about race, who reject ordinary politics and use the internet to spread their opinions. Alt-right is an abbreviation for alternative right. The alt-right rejects mainstream conservatism, believing that it underrepresents the interests of white nationalists. Okay, so pretty terrifying, racist, bigoted, anti-LGBTQIA+, and full of misogyny. Wonderful. So how does someone go from being crunchy to being this? Maybe they don't go full alt-right, tiki torch carrying kind of person. Maybe they're more of an enabler. Maybe they're part of the alt-light instead. According to this fantastic ADL resource, the alt-light is defined by civic nationalism as opposed to racial nationalism, which is a defining characteristic of the alt-right. Generally shun white supremacist thinking, but who are in step with the alt-right in their hatred of feminists and immigrants, among others. Many within the alt-light sphere are virulently anti-Muslim. The group abhors everyone on, quote, the left, and traffics in conspiracy theories. Weirdly, the Proud Boys are alt-light, even though some of the members are alt-right, but yeah, see what I mean? It's very confusing. Alt-light are kind of like enablers, not over racist like alt-right are. Can I just say how bizarre it is? Anytime a white person in the USA says that they hate immigrants, because it's like, my dude, you are one. Literally, it's a Native American's land. You're literally an immigrant. Just like here in Aotearoa, this is Māori land, as defined in the Treaty of Waitangi. And finally, I need to define conspirituality because I'm going to be saying that word a lot throughout this video. It's a broad politico-spiritual philosophy based on two core convictions. One, a secret group covertly controls or is trying to control the political and social order, and two, humanity is undergoing a paradigm shift in consciousness. Yes, this is all of the Illuminati, lizard people, QAnon stuff. But that's still very extreme to go from the crunchy person to alt-light or alt-right. Strangely not as extreme as we may think. To my horror, I've come across vegans who are anti-vax because they're afraid of the autism risk, which it's not, by the way, and because they don't want to have governments involved with their bodies. These are the same people who say that eating whole foods or raw foods is the way to be able to protect against any disease ever, and actually to cure disease. Wait, no, if you add in yoga, definitely. Or actually, you could heal yourself no matter what ails you with just some positive thinking. Yes, I have sadly come across these people. An example you may recall is Kat Von D, who used to be incredibly popular. I did used to love her tattoo eyeliner, that was amazing. However, in 2018, she lost complete credibility because she said that she wasn't going to vaccinate her son. Now, in 2020, she did walk this back, saying that she was misinformed. However, as this video from Fundy Friday shows, she's been on a bit of a crunchy to alt-light journey herself. She's called masks maxi pants on people's faces, years. She's gotten baptized, says she no longer wants to do tattoos. In fact, she's blacked out a large number of her own tattoos. And she also likes to homeschool her child, also leaving California because of the controlling government, and moved to this small little rural town where she has like the biggest house there. She's been on quite a few podcasts talking about her journey, including saying how big of an influence Jordan Peterson was on her life, and ooh, the red flags are just adding up. Again, I'm gonna link Fundy Friday's video for you down below in case you are not all caught up on this strangeness. In my own life, it truly didn't make sense to me how someone could make the ethical and moral choice to lead a vegan lifestyle that is like for the animals, for the environment, but then actively go to hurt other people by not being vaccinated, by not wearing masks, and to actively hurt their own children by not vaccinating them. Like, because they are concerned about this autism risk, even though that shoddy science, because it was shoddy, it wasn't even good to begin with, has been so thoroughly debunked. But it doesn't matter to these people because they are so convinced that it's full of chemicals, toxins, and government observation. To put it simply, I've definitely come across people that make me feel like this.
Treat everybody with dignity and respect.
Yeah.
And love everybody.
Truly, no truer words to live by. Who are you voting for?
I'm kind of voting for Donald Trump. Yeah, a lot of people are against it, but I like him. I think he's very smart.
You just told everybody to be, love one another and be nice. Girl, how the f are you gonna go from be nice and love one another to I'm voting for Donald Trump? Oh, honey.
Same, Chris, same. As discussed on my community tab, I have read all of these books for this video, so spoilers ahead, but I do still highly recommend reading them all. I will have them all listed for you down below, along with all of my sources, same as I always do. And for this video, can I please ask that you don't go commenting before the end of the video, because otherwise you're going to be misinformed and go making snap judgments and stuff. And the thing is, as has been brought up through all of these books, please don't do that. That's kind of how we get into a huge mess when people just jump the gun, and I don't want any of that. How do people even get led down such incorrect paths? From my observation, for women, it's typically these 4 starting points: wellness, weight loss, medical mistreatment, and motherhood. And it can be a combination of any and all of these, and they can all fall under the wellness umbrella, but I like to break things down a little bit further because I really have seen this pattern emerging time and again. As Cultish by Amanda Montell points out, there's this common saying in these wellness places: take what resonates, leave the rest. And that's how people can start down these journeys where they are looking for, say, sugar-free recipes or whole food recipes that they can make which are kid-friendly or weight loss friendly or something like that. And people like Kelly Brogan, Christiane Northrup, Lead Safe Mama, among many others, and just take what speaks to them and ignore or overlook the little dog whistles, the anti-medicine. You keep listening and engage because it is engaging, and then you can wind up scared of your own phone, falling prey to the conspiracy theory of 5G towers causing COVID, and not even wanting to touch your phone because of fears of the Wi-Fi and the signals it's letting off, and then before you know it, you might be buying one of Russell Brand's necklaces. Ooh. I think that we can all understand these pathways, especially if you're from the 2015 sort of era where Freely the Banana Girl was really big on YouTube with the Raw Till 4 stuff. If you were personally victimized by that, by the way, I believe that you are owed definitely some compensation for that. Weight loss aspirations often leads people to yoga, which leans heavily into all of this holistic healing and well-being wellness stuff. And I could do an entire video about the dark history of yoga, but maybe another time. On the wellness path, think of somebody like Gwyneth Paltrow with all of her goop nonsense. She is huge in the wellness space for women. When she got COVID, instead of using her platform of millions of people to encourage them to get vaccinated, she promoted her new book outlining a restrictive diet she said helped her recover, along with expensive alternative therapies like infrared saunas. As I've made an entire video about, medical misogyny is rife, and it impacts women all over the world, especially if you're BIPOC. We get dismissed, treated poorly, told it's all in our heads, told it's just anxiety, when you're actually dealing with physical symptoms. You're dealing with actual problems, but you get dismissed all the time. So it's very easy to get led down this path of looking into ways to be able to take control of your own health, because that's what we're told to do, because you're told that you're in control of your body. And for me personally, this is how I started to go down the crunchy path, because I collapsed after going to the gym because of an undiagnosed heart condition, even though I've been saying I've been having pain and problems for years. And also, as I've talked about, I've dealt with cysts and incredibly painful pelvic pain my whole life ever since I was 14. But after going to the hospital about my heart, I had to make a complete lifestyle change. I had to cut out caffeine, and it was when I was trying to find alternatives to tea and coffee that I came across a whole bunch of this wellness stuff, all of the toxins, the dirty dozen. You have to activate your almonds, fearing sugar, everything must be whole foods, and like all sorts of stuff. And it was only when I started to see people actually promoting things that weren't scientifically backed that I started to question things, and I was like, wait a second, none of this is actually peer-reviewed science, even though there is a lot of peer-reviewed science done when it comes to alternative therapies, as it does dive into in the Conspirituality book. As Conspirituality explains, the feeling of not being seen, or being seen as a body with a problem as opposed to a human on a journey. Research shows that in the United States, doctors interrupt their patients within 11 seconds, which adds to their frustration with a seemingly inhuman system. And if they suffer from difficult conditions, they describe bouncing from specialist to specialist, each with a narrower view of the problem than the last, none of whom seem to be speaking to each other. Now, the disenfranchisement is real, and I'm sure that when you were listening to that paragraph, you were nodding along, finally feeling seen, because yeah, this is not good. So people do want to look at alternatives. It's completely natural that they'd want to do that. Try and find ways to be able to take control of their own health, because your body is your responsibility, as we're told time and again, as a way to like cut government funding for disabilities and just for anything to help people that have struggled at any point in their lives. And this is especially true because getting medical care is so incredibly expensive. Not just in the USA, like doctor trips cost $65 each time for me here. And I know in a number of countries around the world, even if you do have some sort of universal healthcare, it's not applicable at a lot of different doctors' places or specialists or anything. And like the hoops to jump through can take so much time and effort and energy. So I fully do understand why this leads people down these pathways. In my opinion, Raw Beauty Kristi is the perfect example of someone who went into motherhood and then started to go down this crunchy to alt-right pipeline. She's even got photos taken at her house that she's going to be hosting the co-op this year. And her son has appeared in a 4th of July video for the co-op with the hashtag Don't Mess With Our Kids, which is an explicitly anti-trans organization. However, Kristi used to be supportive of the LGBTQIA+ community. I discovered her after Lipstick Gate, as I'm sure many of you did, and I was so overjoyed and thrilled when she was able to get pregnant, because this is something that she's struggled with for so many years, and so this was amazing news. But then she started to kind of do some strange things, and her anxiety was on full display. And honestly, I do quite like people being as vulnerable as they feel comfortable being. I think that's a good thing. However, she then started to say that she wanted to read the Bible and getting more into her sister's church. And there are people that have done full videos on this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, don't worry. But then she was saying that she wants to homeschool her child, and then you link it with this co-op, which is, I've got it on the screen now, specifically anti-LGBTQIA+, specifically a strange version of God First. It's a very, very worrying thing. But also, good luck getting her to discuss any of this, because allegedly she deletes comments about vaccines, she deletes anything questioning her about this, and so it's why people keep on speculating on this, and when they find the evidence, it's like, oh, you're hiding this on purpose because you know it's not going to reflect well on you and it's going to damage your brand. But as I discovered, when she's been informed that she's done something that's like cultural appropriation, for example, her response was this. So I don't really think we're going to be getting a proper response from her. Now look, I do understand why parents in the US in particular may want to homeschool their kids, because schools in the US are getting increasingly unsafe because of school shootings. And that is honestly, it's so tragic that that is even a thing that parents have to worry about. So to me, that does make sense, wanting to homeschool from that perspective. But that's not the scary thing that parents are protecting their kids from when it comes to this sort of homeschooling. The threat that they're worried about is the gays.
These gays, they're trying to murder me.
And kids being taught accurate history that, hey, slavery happened and it was actually a bad thing, we shouldn't do that. And being taught about accurate things about people's bodies, as in what your reproductive system is like. And hey, Jimmy over there has 2 mums. That's cool. Oh no, the travesty, the indoctrination, how dare you? Just reality. Look, if kids are old enough to see straight people kissing on Disney movies that you happily share with them when they're like 3-4 years old, they can handle the fact that someone's got 2 mums. I'm sidetracking here, so let's get on to the men, because for them, there are typically 3 entryways. Wellness, gym culture, and the manosphere, aka the Joe Rogan pipeline. For guys, it often comes down to performing masculinity. You know, no virus can take me down because I'm so strong. The gym is my church, bro. You don't understand. How dare you try and lock those down? And strangely, how mask wearing was feminized, especially in the USA, when the real reason that Trump didn't want to wear a mask was because it was going to ruin his makeup. All you need to do is think about the wellness male influencers who preach about natural food, protein, and gains all the time, whilst they're also probably selling some sort of weird supplements to go along with it, which are completely unregulated. For a more traditional masculine view, seeking healthcare is seen as admitting weakness. Like, when was the last time a male in your life voluntarily took himself for an annual checkup at the doctor?
Ron, you've been sweating in here all day. Are you drinking any fluids?
Yes, plenty.
No, you need to drink water.
Usually I take it neat, but I will make an exception in the name of health.
It means admitting that you're not invincible. It means actually having to face into something like mortality, which affects all of us. But for men in particular, they're sold this idea that they have to be so strong, impermeable, powerful creatures and just these big protector beings that you can't show any sign of weakness. It's like dealing with a cat when a cat is sick or something. They're just going to hide that they're injured because I'm like, no, otherwise you'll take me down, no. And it's like, no, we want you to be okay, just like we want the cat to be okay, because who doesn't love cats? So men tend to turn to aspirational individuals to get their advice from. However, all that's really happening here is performing patriarchy, promoting misogyny, and toxic masculinity. And ultimately all of this just hurts them more, but that is for a future video which I'm currently working on as well. Joe Rogan's influence is not to be underestimated. To quote Conspirituality, Joe Rogan infamously hosted Alex Jones twice. Rogan is a legit hot yoga fan, obsessed with body optimization, ice bathing, meditating in isolation tanks, psychedelics, and supplements. He smashes the stats of big cable news because listeners from various political demographics say they trust his affable, irreverent style and seeming open-mindedness that allows him to talk to anyone about anything for hours at a time. Rogan started off in March of 2020 hosting epidemiologist Michael Osterholm for some science-informed analysis of the emerging pandemic. By January of 2022, in addition to a range of conspiracists, snake oil peddlers, and right-wing anti-quarantine politicians, Rogan had hosted the holy trinity of discredited doctors and anti-vaccine COVID profiteers, Robert Malone, Peter McCullough, and Pierre Corey. He went public on social media about his own short-lived bout with the illness and detailed his alt-med COVID cure cocktail. Sports celebrities like UFC President Dana White and definitely unvaccinated NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers would go on to say that they consulted Rogan for expert advice when they tested positive. Rogan advised healthy people who are 21 and younger and who work out not to get vaccinated against COVID. When he got COVID himself, he told his millions of listeners he recovered using an extensive cocktail of treatments that included the ineffective drug ivermectin. He provided a Wild West megaphone for disgraced doctors with apocalyptic fetishes and health regimes to sell. His show was like a Shark Tank for conspirituality.
When you do the weave, look at this, just in this one thing, we're talking about little pieces all over here, but it always ends up, home. No, it comes back home for the right people. For the wrong people, it doesn't come back home and they end up in the wilderness, right? But
look what you did, you little jerk.
The mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
And would you look at that? He equated Elon Musk to being the Wizard of Oz, and tell me that you haven't read the book or watched the movie, because that's not actually a compliment. And this is how he wanted to endorse Trump. How's that election going in the US, by the way? I'm filming this before it's even happened, so how are you all doing? Yeah? Because I know that I'm anxious about it, and I'm in Aotearoa. I don't know how you're feeling.
Hell, diddly ding dong crap! Can't you morons do anything right?
Now look, you may be thinking, but I'm smart, I'm not fallible to any of this stuff. I base my opinions on everything based on facts and evidence. And my sweet summer child, I wish that we were all like that. However, we are certainly not. Amanda Montell explains this in Cultish. Experts agree that not even the most logical minds, not even scientists, escape confirmation bias completely. Common human irrationalities like hypochondria, prejudice, and paranoia are all forms of confirmation bias, where every little thing that happens can be interpreted as an illness, a reason to deride a whole demographic group of people, or proof that something is out to get you. Cultish leaders all rely on the power of confirmation bias by presenting a one-sided version of their information that supports their ideology and that their followers actively want to hear. After that confirmation bias does the work for them, enhanced by peer pressure, it becomes all the harder to resist. The pandemic effect. The official response to the COVID-19 pandemic illuminated the opacity of democracy. The change in rules and the jargon they were delivering reminded many of every confusing and queasy doctor's office visit they had. Lockdowns reminded some of all the times they felt the cure was worse than the disease. COVID exposed the craven policies of governments interested in health only as far as it could keep people working. It made many people more powerfully than ever before feel that they live in an age in which they are surveilled but neglected, in which they are managed but not heard. And I think that we can all agree with the concerns raised here, right? It has felt that people's health has been put at risk in order to keep the economy going. The ability to work from home got seen as laziness as opposed to increasing accessibility to workplaces, instead of having this great opportunity, which was there, in order to be able to make sure that we could face into the issues of the climate crisis, make sure that people could actually have a healthier work-life balance, and change things for the better for everybody. Instead, no, everybody wanted to get back to normal as soon as possible, even though normal isn't sustainable for any of us. Like, all of us are like crushing under the weight of capitalism and like the horrors that it has unleashed on the world. Sorry to break it to you, sweetie, but the shareholders really don't care. They just want their fast returns. Naomi Klein came across this too, as she discussed in Doppelganger. She was canvassing for the National Democratic Party, the NDP, in Canada, with her husband Avi, and he went up to a home with solar panels and with Buddha and Ganesh bronze statues in the window, and he thought, great, this is going to be easy, this is going to be sweet, because we're both left-leaning, everything's going to be fine. And then a white woman with ropey muscles came to the porch dressed in yoga attire and ready for a fight, putting her hand over her mouth in lieu of a mask. She had exactly one question for him: what is your position on vaccine passports? Avi replied that the party was in favour of checking vaccination status for indoor activities, which made good epidemiological sense at that stage of the pandemic, and asked her what her position was, and that's when she started talking about her bodily autonomy, sovereign citizenship, and how she had a strong immune system. That's great, Avi said. It's great that you're healthy. The concern, I guess, is that not everyone has a strong immune system. Some people have compromised systems and health problems that make the virus more likely to make them seriously ill or even die. Her response in this hippy-dippy West Coast community was, I think those people should die. And with that, she disappeared into a cloud of sandalwood. Do you remember when the Centre for Countering Digital Hate revealed the Disinformation Dozen in 2021? Maybe not, because so much has happened since then, but I'll tell you anyway. On Facebook, the dozen were responsible for 73% of all anti-vaccine content, and on the social media platforms, 95% of COVID misinformation was not removed. Combined, these 12 people had a following of 59 million, and across all social media platforms, these 12 people produced 65% of the shares of anti-vaccine misinformation on social media platforms. And this was at a critical time in the pandemic. There were a lot of people in the wellness space, and oh, would you look at that? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Oh dear. A lot more is said about him in the book Conspirituality, which I really do recommend reading.
Oh, that the president-elect has told RFK Jr. to quote-unquote go wild on America's public health agencies.
We are screwed.
Hey, I don't want to hear that defeatist attitude. I want to hear you upbeat.
We're screwed.
There you go.
And then when some action started to happen, people kept on claiming, oh, you're removing my free speech. The thing is that providing disinformation is very different to providing an opinion that you may be afraid of vaccines. But people could hide behind saying, oh, but I'm just saying what I think. I'm just asking questions, as we've all heard that be said so many times in these sorts of spaces. But things like vaccine disinformation increased the amount of people who became vaccine hesitant, which sadly directly cost people their lives. People were wondering how a vaccine could have been created so quickly around this. However, the thing is that countries actually worked together and funneled a whole bunch of money to scientists directly, because I don't know if you know this, but science is often underfunded. Scientists spend a lot of their time begging people for money to be able to do their experiments. And what also happened was some scientists were redirected away from their normal jobs to focus on COVID-19. And so all of this combined meant that you had people striving towards the same thing, trying to find vaccines, trying to find something that would help. And so when you have all of this money, all of this resource behind it, then you do get things happening faster. This even happened at my old workplace. Some of the scientists there got redirected to focus on like COVID mitigation, COVID help. But people were still mistrustful, and I do understand why that is the case, because science communication over the years has not really been the most accessible to everybody. And yes, I have directly given this feedback to scientists themselves. Now, a lot of scientists do want to talk about stuff with everybody that they're working on and everything, but there are definitely issues, say GMOs, for example. Scientists have been directly attacked for working on GMOs. It's very strange, and so that makes scientists more wary about being open about what they're working on when you're getting attacked for the work that you're doing. Plus, there are a few scientists who want to keep science in the upper echelons, keep it in a very academic space, but this is where all of the wonderful public health people come into play. This is where you have great science communicators come into play. Like Susie Wiles did an amazing job here in Aotearoa. She's a microbiologist, and she made understanding the pandemic a lot more accessible for everybody to understand. And I really do think this is a space which needs to get focused on a hell of a lot more, is having science communication accessible to the layman, which does mean letting go of some of the very highfalutin scientific terminology and wording of stuff, and just breaking down the findings of things in a way that is actually accessible to people, because otherwise you get people seeing these headlines about tampons containing toxins and stuff, and people jumping to all sorts of conclusions. But if we had good science communication, then people wouldn't have all of this fear-mongering, you know what I mean? As Amanda Montel writes in Cultish, it's really no coincidence that cults are having such a proverbial moment. The 21st century has provided a climate of socio-political unrest and mistrust of long-established institutions like church, government, big pharma, and big business. It's the perfect societal recipe for making new and unconventional groups. Everything from Reddit incels to woo-woo wellness influencers who promise to provide answers that the conventional ones couldn't supply seem freshly appealing. And social media and declining marriage rates and culture-wide feelings of isolation are at an all-time high. Civic engagement is at a record-breaking low. In 2019, Forbes labelled loneliness an epidemic. And Naomi Klein points out the pandemic happening in 2020 happened atop a whole number of other huge issues that people were facing. From the climate crisis to mass incarceration to growing wealth inequality, unfair and unaffordable private healthcare in the USA in particular, individuals are forced to assume sole responsibility for navigating every hardship and every difficulty, from poverty to student debt to home eviction to drug addiction. When the pandemic exacerbated these hardships, it was an uphill battle to build solidarity and convince people to support collective solutions. After a lifetime of being told that they were on their own, a subset of the population doubled down on individualism. It does not now seem surprising to Klein that they essentially said, we won't mask or jab or stay home to protect people we've already chosen not to see. And as I was quoting the article, I'm sure that you were nodding along, because yeah, we all know that things are screwed. None of us are happy with the way that things are. I mean, unless if you're part of the 1%, in which case you are absolutely fine and happy. You would not be watching one of my videos now, would you? But this odd, jarring feeling of coming across people who aren't fitting really into the left or right identifiers has not been something which only I've been coming across. Naomi Klein writes about it in her book Doppelganger. But very importantly, Naomi stresses that this is not the horseshoe theory in action, which is the idea that the right and left each bend at the furthest reaches until they almost touch, but that is to confuse the far left, which is where the socialists and revolutionaries reside, with the far out, which is where the wellness and new age spiritualists hang out. Moreover, the members of these subcultures who made the disinformation dozen had all figured out how to monetize the far out. They had some of the largest online platforms and the strongest personal brands, which they then used to sell high-priced retreats at seminars and memberships and newsletters and tinctures. These are all big-name influencers with countless smaller-time followers. Once this is understood, the new alliances start to make more sense. And now you can see the hustle behind the facade, can't you? Because I do have a lot of sympathy for people that go out looking for ways to be able to feel better, to be able to look after their loved ones, to be able to look after their kids. I fully get that. I have a lot of sympathy for people. The people that I, in all honesty, am a bit vengeful towards, because I am a Scorpio, it's my birthday by the way, are the ones who weaponize all these feelings of fear and encourage people along a path of cutting people in their lives off, who sell unregulated supplements whilst taking advantage of the valid fears people have that their government won't protect them, who see people only as a business opportunity with no care for who they hurt, and who actively shun people away from medical treatment, saying it's a betrayal, even when they're undergoing things like cancer treatment. They're just gleefully there with their blood-soaked knife, reaping their rewards. Don't forget, you are in charge of your own body. It's your responsibility. No one else is going to help you. People want to be as healthy as possible at all times, but especially when dealing with a virus. Because as we've been taught for many years, health is wealth, your health is your responsibility, you are in charge of your own body. It's like health is a meritocracy in a way. And sadly, there is an incredibly strong correlation. It's basically a string line of the green juices, the yoga, the essential oils, the all chemicals are bad, and the anti-vax propaganda. Who was hit hard by the pandemic? Everybody was, especially people who lost their lives, people who lost loved ones, which is sadly still happening, people who became disabled because of it. Hi, it's me who suffers every day. I'm in a lot of pain right now, but I'm acting for you. This is your friendly reminder to please go get boosted and wear a mask in crowded places. Thank you. But according to that yoga person from earlier, I just should have died. Wow, nothing like eugenics first thing in the morning, is there? But who was really hit hard by the pandemic? The wellness industry and the fitness coaches, the workout places. They just had to shut up shop, and a lot of them weren't really being all that supported by the government. And it's not like a lot of them were able to even shift to being on YouTube. You know, like some people could do their Pilates classes on YouTube, but it's not the same thing, you know? And many of these jobs you can't do virtually, because can you imagine trying to get a virtual masseuse? Actually don't, because I'm sure that there's some sort of sick game about that, and I don't want to Google that, okay? Just, ooh. The people enmeshed in wellness culture were apt to morph into anti-vaccine and anti-mask influencers. And in Naomi Klein's book, she says this: the individuals must take charge of their own bodies as their primary sites of influence, control, and competitive edge. Those who don't exercise that control deserve what they get. It's all too compatible with far-right notions of natural hierarchies, genetic superiority, and disposable people. There's that ableism I told you about. Do you want a video on the dark side of yoga? Because, hint, eugenics and Nazis. So I could do that video in January if you want. You just tell me, okay? As said in Conspirituality, soft eugenics, modern yoga and wellness, which echoed with a kind of now depoliticized body fascism that was over a century old, was being laundered through aspirational consumerism so that its sexist, racist, and violent implications were almost invisible. These were techniques by which we could constantly judge ourselves by possible ideals of physical and moral fitness, and perform our virtues or confess our sins to dominant figures who held charismatic power. The twisted message was that if a person was injured or disabled, they were revealing the karmic punishment of their own unprocessed trauma. We didn't recognize the eugenics theme running unconsciously through all of it, that flaws in bodies should be identified, corrected, and bred out of existence, so they no longer troubled the advancement of human evolution or the conscience of the privileged. We all remember when a number of politicians were being like Lord Farquaad, right?
Many more families are going to lose loved ones before their time.
A message shared and mocked widely online for sounding a little too similar to Shrek's Lord Farquaad.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Nothing is as it seems. There are 5 common factors of science denial. 1, it's cherry-picking evidence. 2, belief in conspiracy theories. 3, reliance on fake experts and the denigration of real experts. 4, committing logical errors. 5, setting impossible expectations for what science can achieve. Together, these provide a common blueprint for science deniers to create a counter-narrative on any topic where they wish to challenge a scientific consensus. The Hoofnagel brothers define science denial as the employment of rhetorical tactics to give the appearance of argument or legitimate debate when in actuality there is none. For an example of number 5, think about people saying that a vaccine must be 100% effective and 100% risk-free, 100% safe. Nothing on the planet is 100% risk-free, 100% safe. Getting in your car is not 100% risk-free, 100% safe. And literally no medication actually exists on the market that is 100% risk-free. But people want to say that they expect that from science, they expect that from the scientists, from medication, in order to find any possible reason to be like, now it's unsafe. You'd see what I mean? This is further emphasized through thought-terminating cliches, which Amanda describes in her book as semantic stop signs. They are a cue to discontinue thought. They're very simplistic phrases, but they stifle debate and critical thinking. Think of phrases like, everything happens for a reason, trust the process, it is what it is. These are not bad in and of themselves. However, they can be used to shut down discussion or debate, and it's eerily common in these sticky, tricky places of conspirituality. Phrases like, truth is a construct, none of this matters on a cosmic level, I hold space for multiple realities, don't let yourself be ruled by fear, and dismissing any anxieties or doubts as limiting beliefs. Especially when people are starting to go down this path because of the phrase, take what resonates, leave the rest. Meaning you can listen to the wellness guru telling you a recipe so you can cut out refined sugar for a wholesome snack, and they're also peppering in other things, often in the form of loaded language so it can go over your head, encouraging you to do your own research, telling you about the horrors of food that aren't organic, that there's a correlation between 5G and COVID, and that your phone emits electromagnetic waves that are trying to kill you. And all other sorts of nonsense making you scared of everything. But don't worry, they have products to sell you to protect you. Now look, you may be judging people that fall down these sorts of rabbit holes, however, researchers have found that the folks most attracted to New Age messaging are more with it than one might think. Michael Shermer, a science writer and founder of the Skeptic Society, has written about the correlation between intelligence and the belief in weird ideas. Psychologist Stuart Weiss has remarked that the New Age movement has led to increased popularity of supernatural ideas among groups previously thought to be immune to superstition. The markers of higher intelligence, higher socioeconomic status, and higher educational levels. Therefore, the age-old view that people who believe in, quote, weird things are less intelligent than non-believers may not hold entirely true. Objectively, made-up metaphysical and interpretations of quantum fields and upgrading your DNA are just as irrational as ghosts and alien visitations, but the fact that they're associated with a demographic of social media, savvy young people with college degrees makes them seem more acceptable. It's not that smart people aren't capable of believing in cultish things. Instead, it's that smart people are better at defending beliefs they arrived at for non-smart reasons. Most people, even skeptics and scientists, don't come to the bulk of their beliefs for reasons having to do with empirical evidence. No one sits down and reads a bunch of scientific studies, then weighs the pros and cons before deciding to believe that, say, money equals happiness. Rather, such variables such as genetic predispositions, parental predilections, sibling influences, peer pressure, educational experiences, and life impressions all shape the personality preferences and emotional inclinations that, in conjunction with social and cultural influences, lead us to make certain belief choices. Being smart and hip to the zeitgeist is not enough to protect someone from cultish influence online. Think about it. It started with the Dirty Dozen, which got promoted by people like Oprah, by sham doctors like Dr. Oz. And many other people were talking about this because the EWG, Environmental Working Group, came up with this list of the 12 fruits and vegetables which you absolutely have to avoid because they're the ones with the most pesticides. The Environmental Working Group sounds legitimate, doesn't it? However, it's a lobbying group which is funded by the organic industry. Isn't that interesting? Couldn't be any conflicts there or anything. The point is that they sound legit with an authoritative sounding name to peddle scientific half-truths and outright fabrications. They are very good at fear-mongering. Now look, I understand that people are scared of chemicals, but I just want to say this with love. Everything around you, the air you breathe, water, just straight up H2O, is a chemical. Everything is chemicals. And it's just... there's a lot of fear-mongering around it in order to try and make people scared of things, which makes people want to buy stuff that they don't actually need. And if people really want to focus on natural is better in every case, and it's like, can I introduce you to eating a raw potato or maybe trying arsenic because they're completely natural.
You know, some guys just can't hold their arsenic.
As much as I support women's wrongs, I have to say this is a joke right now because do not do either of those things. Don't. Now, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is actually out to look after people, is actually out to look after the environment as a whole. That's literally their job. This is in the US, by the way. Same as the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, legit. However, a pattern that's been happening with these influencers is a mistrust of these groups, even though their entire job is around safety. The regulations are there to protect people, to protect the environment. They're there as a way to monitor things, to make sure everything's fine for you. But people want those regulations stripped away. Do you remember how I brought up RFK Jr.'s name in the disinformation dozen and how dangerous all of that was? Guess who Trump has appointed in charge of this stuff and who plans on gutting the FDA? Good luck, USA. That's all I can really say.
Said about vaccines that raised some concerns. On Saturday, Mr. Kennedy said online that the Trump White House will, quote, advise all U.S. water systems to remove fluoride from public water.
To me, that makes absolutely no sense, especially if people are concerned about toxins in kids' toys or in kids' food or something. The only people that deregulation benefits is corporations and businesses, because that means that they can get away with worse business practices and make their profit margins larger. And who has been conveniently aligning himself with this space for many years at this point? You knew we had to get there. It's the orange man. We're dealing with Trump. Is he the president? I hope he's not the president. I'm filming this before the election. I'm sorry, I don't know. Ooh, gosh, I hope he's not the president again.
What the hell to the no?
Trump and his allies have been throwing doubt at legitimate science, at legitimate news for many years at this point. The way that Trump handles language and has captured people's fears and used that to be able to boost his own platform is not to be overlooked. It's riveting to watch someone on a podium speak from a place so animalistic that most of us don't let ourselves behave that way, even with our closest friends. As Atlantic staff writer George Packer wrote in 2019, the strength of Trump's populist language lies in its openness. It requires no expert knowledge. It's the way most people talk when their inhibitors are off. Over time, the memorable nicknames and insidery terminology acquire a strong emotional charge. A word or phrase takes on such baggage that its mere mention can spark fear, grief, dread, jubilation, reverence, anything. The leader can exploit it to steer followers' behavior. This lingo is what some psychologists call loaded language. Sometimes loaded language works by twisting the meaning of existing words until the new significance eclipses the old one. Think of a phrase like fake news being so synonymous, how woke has become bastardized to be this completely different version of what it originally was in AAVE. Over the years, he's leaned into people's fears about their job stability, about not being able to afford things, and twisted the downfalls of capitalism to make things about individualism and meritocracy instead, that the threat of the other is there, whether it's immigrants or more recently, as he's been saying, the enemies from within. Look, if you want to dive into everything bad that Trump has ever done, I will link this video from Some More News for you. That will be down below for you because I can't get into it today. It took them long enough. Alright. Mistrust of experts, painting any negative reporting as fake news, and being slanderous and casting doubt on anybody who's ever come out against Trump, whether it's about SA or illegal things that he allegedly, I have to say allegedly, has done. Casting all of this as fakes and frauds and only out for money, and then also casting doubt on victims of SA, saying things like, look at them, I wouldn't go there. I've discussed this whole issue in this video here. It's got an eerie similarity to fascistic roots. When scholars argue that fascism depends on devaluing academics and glorifying anti-intellectualism, this is a great example of what they're talking about. It's a short trip between Steiner touting his pseudo-history book and Hitler coining the term Lügenpresse, lying press, or in today's press, fake news, to deny any legitimate journalism that would push back against the Third Reich.
From all of the various signals out there, and also means, look at this, look how strong I am. I think this is making people more powerful, as a matter of fact. Look at that.
The men who hide behind wellness. Now, I could make an entire video about Russell Brand, but I think his ego is big enough. I don't really want to, and honestly, my patience is so short anyway. It's just, I don't need that sort of stress in my life, alright? I'm not the only one who's noticed over the years how he's been on this weird descent to become more like an Alex Jones kind of person. The dude has been known his entire career for calling people out on stuff, for being basically incredibly vocal and stirring the pot. However, when women came forward with things that he allegedly did, as I talked about in this video here, what he was doing was leaning harder into the right. It was leaning harder into conspiracy town. Like, he more recently has worked together with Jordan Peterson, where they are praying together.
No wonder you were fired from that Canadian university. You're a troublemaker. You're a rabble-rouser.
Talk about a pseudo-intellectual and a conspiracy theorist joining forces over misogyny. What kind of world are we living in? Naomi Klein, the author of the book Doppelganger, which I keep on referencing, I've been telling you to read for many months at this point, she actually came across this correlation too herself. She tweeted, "This knee-jerk denialism is precisely why people with plenty of skeletons in the closet love conspiracy culture. They have a built-in defense against accountability. It's all a conspiracy, always." And you'll spot this too when you're listening to these type of guys, how mainstream media is biased. Now, there is actually a kernel of truth to what they're saying here, because media outlets are indeed biased. I wish I had a Ground News sort of sponsorship here, because then I'd be able to show you and have a really good ad read to put in here, but sadly no sponsorship today. More often than not, though, it's down to advertisers and shareholders. Like, I've talked about how I've been demonetized on YouTube here. It's why people have to use censored words like saying unalive or something, how that's even a word in the dictionary now, for example. But it's actually down to advertisers not wanting to have their adverts on something that is dark, scary, potentially controversial or something. And I talk about taboo topics, so it's definitely hit me too. But it's not necessarily censorship, it's just because it's not advertiser friendly. Like, if I was just unboxing stuff all day, then I would be making heaps of money. The only ones who would love if I was unboxing stuff all day would be the cats, because they'd have heaps of boxes to climb in. I'm not going to promote consumerism here, do not worry. Elon Musk, when trying to cover up his terrible decision to pay far too much money for Twitter.com, he's definitely leaned into this pathway too, especially after he scared off all of the advertisers because it's such a right-wing conspiracy theory sort of platform, and advertisers were like, whoa, I don't think I want to be involved here.
The price of freedom of speech is not cheap, is it?
I think it's like 44 billion, something like that.
Just
round numbers.
give or take $1 billion.
Yeah, round numbers.
No, bro, people are just trying to protect people from the hate crimes that you are trying to commit. He touts free speech all the time, even though it's not under threat in the USA at all. Well, actually, I could go on for quite a while about how protesters on the left are being cracked down on, but it's not affecting the people on the right, is what I'm trying to point out here. He's also on the side of deregulation, not because of any issues, but because, duh, it would work way better for his businesses. Aligning himself with these folk means that he can feed off people's bigotry and profit from that, and he's absolutely part of the rising eugenics problem, but we'll be getting into that in a second.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark, gothic MAGA.
Once you actually see this pattern, you will not be able to unsee it. Like, Andrew Tate is a classic example of this. Selling this toxic masculinity and misogyny wrapped up in this strange facade of patriarchal quote-unquote success. Saying things like he won't sleep with vaccinated women. The vaccines are clearly working. Uh-oh, eugenics has entered the chat. Why are the yoga and wellness influencers of Instagram all so predictably hot? Even the ones selling non-visual things such as mindfulness, Reiki, and chanting. Is it objectification? Yes. Unrealistic ideals of beauty? Yes. But it's also the soft eugenics of wellness, a constant drumbeat of signs that tell us who is worthy of respect and love, who has mastered the world and its fickle economy. This is where things get more disturbing. And you'll have noticed earlier when I talked about the fears of vaccines causing autism, even though they don't. The inherent ableism at play here. And as shared earlier, the weak, aka the elderly, disabled people, I mean, they deserve to die because they're defective humans. They just weren't bred properly. There is also a link in this space between people with these sorts of mindsets wanting to have a huge amount of children, also known as the pronatalists, and I've talked about them in the past, and people like Elon Musk are absolutely one of them. He's got 12 children to 3 different women. Imagine if he were a woman with that. He wouldn't be considered to be successful at all, huh? Or powerful, or noteworthy, right? He would be seen as like a shameful person. Isn't that interesting? Superman and Superwomen can have super babies for the dawning of a new age, if they devote themselves to the smoothies that will nourish their special juices. Conspirituality draws on old fascist ideologies about potent physiology and deviancy. Conspiritualists in general are obsessed with fertility and virility, on a proprietary spectrum that spans from Christian Northrup selling herbs from Thailand that she blends into vaginal moisturizers, to Proud Boys committing not to during No Nut November. Ugh. gross, to store up and instrumentalize the power of their semen. Ugh, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Now, with Tucker Carlson boosting testicle tanning via light therapy to combat a crash in testosterone levels, it seems we've entered into a golden age of fascist junk science. Pronatalists kind of terrify me because they only really want to have a lot of white children around the place. So there's this want for these strong, powerful, smart, genetically superior white babies. I can't see this going badly at all, can you?
Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies. It's your body, my choice. And men win again. Men win again. There will never, ever be a female president. Never.
The long-term ramifications. With this staunch self-reliance, mistrust of others, mistrust of the experts, mistrust of the media, not to mention a purposeful distancing of your own humanity, this sort of thinking inevitably leads to I'm only responsible for myself, it's everybody else's fault if they weren't as prepared as me, they just failed at meritocracy, they're just stupid, I put the blame on everyone individually for failing as opposed to thinking that, hey, people should work together as a community. This is despite the fact, as we know, it depends on where you're born in the world, who you're born to, disabilities, wealth, poverty, all sorts of stuff. Even things like pollution have huge impacts on people's lives, livelihoods, and future trajectory. But there's always like this want for the whole Cinderella story on the exceptionalism, the one that broke through, and it's like, no, but you don't see all of the people that fail trying to like break through and get through the class systems. You don't see all of those people. Nobody deserves to suffer. However, because this mindset is being promoted, we get into this very dangerous place as brought up through Naomi Klein. Another narrative spreading much faster goes like this. I'll be okay, I'm prepared with my canned goods and solar panels and relative place of privilege on this planet. It's other people who will suffer. The trouble with that narrative, though, is that it requires finding ways to live with and rationalize the mass suffering of others, and that's where the stories and logics that cast other people's deaths as an unavoidable form of natural selection, perhaps even a blessing, come into play, like the fascist New Age alliance. All of this is playing out on a kind of historical loop. Whenever one group has chosen to allow terrible violence to be inflicted on another group, there have been stories and logics that provided the permission of the beneficiaries of that violence either to actively, even gleefully participate or to actively look away. Stories that said things like the people being sacrificed, enslaved, imprisoned, colonized, left to die, so that the others can live comfortably and not the same level of human that they are. That others, substandard, lesser, darker, more animal, diseased, criminal, lazy, uncivilized, etc. And this is where the book that made me cry multiple times comes into play, because Tara Westover was raised in a off-the-grid Mormon family with a very paranoid father who was incredibly controlling. It was a very abusive household, and the father and mother didn't do anything about it, in fact, casting doubt on the victims. She didn't even have a birth certificate. She was homeschooled, and even that homeschooling was seen to be a waste of time by her father, who is the patriarch of the family. And this is kind of why I'm worried about the trajectory, the path that we're going on, because seeing the life that she led and how there are so many similarities between this pipeline and where she wound up and had to escape from, essentially, is very scary to me. Her father was the one that approved any of the books that were used to teach the kids, and it turns out he was a white supremacist, and he had a history book about how slavery was a good thing, actually, and it was saying that the burden was actually on the white slave owners because they had to look after the burden that was like the black people that they enslaved. Oh gosh, black people were just so much happier when they were enslaved, of course. This is what his book was teaching her. She only learnt that this was wrong when she escaped to go into higher education. Like, it's an amazing book. I would honestly do an entire video about it. Like, I almost feel like this is a book club thing that I would want to do with like chatting with other people, because as many nightmares as that book gave me, it's also very good. It was her dad that propelled them further into conspiracy, but again, he's the patriarch of the family, so whatever he says goes, and so they just had to go along with it. He actually removed the seats and seatbelts from their car and got the family into a near-fatal crash, nearly killing the mother. However, no doctors, you don't want to go to hospital or anything like that, because you know what? The devil is with the doctors. Education at all was seen as a waste of time, let alone higher education. To quote her father, he said, "College is like extra school for people too dumb to learn the first time around." When Tara was working for her dad when she was 10 years old, yes, she was up on a forklift in like many feet off the ground and she fell off. I can't describe the injuries, otherwise I will be demonetized. I'll just say it was so bad that she couldn't walk for a few weeks, right? However, what happens? He's just disappointed in her for the fact that she wasted some of his time on his job because she went and got injured, and sent her home to her mother, where all she had to help her was tinctures. It wasn't taking her to the hospital at all. Women and girls were entirely the property of men. Whatever men wanted them to do, that went. And women were also not meant to be the main breadwinners. They weren't even meant to work at all. But you could be a midwife, or you could go into selling, I don't know, herbs and salves and all the other stuff that her mother got into, such as things like energy healing. And her mother made a lucrative business out of all of this energy healing and out of making these salves and these tinctures and these potions and lotions and stuff as a direct opposition to Obamacare, as a direct opposition to going to a doctor ever. When Tara's grandmother had cancer, Tara's father said, "Those doctors will just kill you quicker." Not to mention the extreme control over everything a woman did, said, wore, anything. It gave Tara such this huge complex. And again, I could talk about this for days, and honestly I'll be talking about abusive relationships in an upcoming video and what we can do about them. Don't worry, there's going to be hope there too, I promise. In Tara's world, women were always in the wrong, even in abusive situations. Tara's father was convinced that the Illuminati were running the government, they were running the universities, they were running all of the hospitals and doctors, and going to them meant that you were siding with the devil. He's a doomsday prepper, so remember when Y2K happened and people thought that computers wouldn't be able to cope and stuff? So he had prepared the whole family to make sure that they could all go into shutdown, lockdown, and had everything ready. So it's sort of that kind of paranoid mentality. And so that's why I'm saying I'm seeing all of these direct lines leading to more people having to live in this hell that Tara lived through, and when it was truly hell that she lived through. But this really is my fear, especially in the US with how things are going when it comes to this pipeline in particular. And that's why I wanted to raise this book as like a sort of worst case scenario. But Tara's not alone with her experience. Other people are already still living like that and experiencing the horrors that she did too, because it's enabled, because it's completely protected, because you have to protect the patriarch, you have to protect the abusers and cast doubt onto women who are coming forward about the things that they go through. So let's try and wrap this up with a bit of hope here, because yes, I think that you can tell this has kind of taken over my life and been something which I've been thinking about late at night when I can't sleep because I'm in so much pain. This has also been eating me up because I've got so much sympathy for people that have just been trying to find ways to feel okay, especially after being dismissed by doctors. They're trying to eat the right things because of fear of chemicals and everything. They're trying to do the right thing by protecting their babies from things which they're told will harm them, like people like Lead Safe Mama do all the time, and people just like her. This ranges from readily available baby food saying it's full of toxins to vaccinations causing autism, which they absolutely do not. Again, they don't. Plus, I'm sorry, how ableist is it for people that are autistic? Like, seriously, disgusting behavior. For people who have lost loved ones and try to protect others in their life from things which made them sick, because that's what they've been told by all of these conspiritualitist people. I hold a lot of space for these people who have been manipulated, who have had their hope weaponized against them because they've been told to fear absolutely everything. Over time, the vocabulary changes, the people that are in their circle changes, and before they know it, they're in too deep into something and may not even realize it until it's too late, until they actually fully believe this stuff. If someone in your life has gone down this path or is falling down this path, truly I feel so much for you. As was constantly brought up throughout these books, just like when dealing with someone who's fallen prey to a cult, making sure that you still have that connection with people is so critically important, to make sure that they've got people who are outside this little weird bubble silo that has been created, so they know that they've got people that they can go to ask some questions of, to have a way out. And rather than having a smug attitude, no matter how much I love to feel like this goat meme, seriously, this is me so much of the time, trying to let go of that smugness and instead approach people with this sense of like respect to them and open-mindedness so that they can feel safe that they can ask these questions and have this doubt and stuff without being like, ha, I told you so. No one's going to feel safe coming forward in that sort of environment. And I say this all the time, all humans are fallible. We have all been wrong about something at some point or another in our lives. Ensuring people can say that they were wrong without creating this whole like, gotcha moment with this like karmic internet sort of virality sort of attitude, that doesn't actually help anybody. In fact, it means that people are less likely to be able to talk to you. It really comes down to approaching people as a person, you know, with respect, as is brought up in the book How to Talk to a Science Denier. When talking to a conspiracy theorist, show empathy and avoid ridicule. Conspiracy theorists also have an outsized influence despite their small numbers. An analysis of over 2 million comments on the subreddit r/conspiracy found that while 5% of posters exhibited conspiratorial thinking, they were responsible for 64% of all comments. Given this, it may be especially worthwhile to occasionally try and engage with the most committed science deniers, for once you've found a perhaps small source of disinformation, maybe it can be neutralized. It is also important to remember the shallowness of the disinformation pool, simple interactions with less committed folks to present information that they aren't yet hearing from super spreaders. Perhaps you might have a chance to stop more people who start out questioning but end up as deniers. When people in your life are starting to show signs of leaning a bit more right-leaning, that's where it's the prime time to step in and start counteracting them and providing them with evidence, providing them with resources. And as was brought up again in the How to Talk to a Science Denier book, this is where consistency matters, where not cutting people off matters, because when that happens, that's where the silos happen and that's when the rabbit holes happen, and we don't want that to happen any more than it already has. But if we do want to get anywhere, like Naomi Klein brings up in her book, we, especially on the left, need to learn how to be more open-minded and listen to people, caring and forgiving of people who have been wrong, because ultimately we don't want these silos to keep continuing. Like, the us versus them thing, that should only really be applying to us, the people, against the people in power. Those are the ones that are actually harming people actively. Yes, some people are doing atrocious things, which I truly do not understand, and they should be held accountable for that. I'm on about, like, the regular people that you're coming across that have fallen prey to stuff, making sure that they know that they can talk to you about things if they're uncertain about stuff, and trying to intervene at those early stages is so critically important. That was brought up a lot in How to Talk to a Science Denier. And I don't want to be misconstrued here, because as I've been stressing, this is when people are starting to go down these pathways where it really is critically important. And like, I can't tell you to have people who are unsafe for you in your life. Like, that would be ridiculous of me. And honestly, the way that the election in the US has gone, I can't actually believe it. And sadly, people are just openly wearing their hate on their sleeve now. And it is, I can't imagine living in that country. I know that we're under right-wing government here in Aotearoa, and I hate it so much. But the way that the right is gaining more and more power around the world is very scary. And this is kind of what was being brought up in Naomi Klein's book a lot, was how us on the left, we actually need to work together better. We need to be less nitpicky of each other and actually combine forces and work together, because the sad thing is that people on the right and the far right, they are just focused on making sure that what they want happens. And sadly, that is incredibly bigoted, hateful, and awful stuff. But us on the left, like, I was vulnerable in showing you my political compass, because some people will think that I am so extreme and some people will think that I don't go far enough. But ultimately, we're aiming for the same stuff, right? And this, again, is where I'm going to say getting involved in your local community, doing that positive stuff locally, actually helping the people that have been let down by these right-leaning governments, that have been marginalized, that have been actively hurt, creating this community, creating found families, especially, my God, especially if your family have voted for Trump. truly, I feel so much for you. And I really just don't want anyone to misconstrue me by me trying to encourage people to keep people in their life. Like I said, it's when people are at the very start of their journeys. Sadly, with how far gone some people have gotten, and I don't know what to suggest to make things better. I'm just a girl in Aotearoa trying to find like any sort of hope and positivity to hold on to, and it feels hard to create at the moment, and I understand if you're feeling full of despair right now, but that's kind of why I'm saying this fight, this want for a better world, that's where we need to lean on each other and come together a lot better. Especially as the climate crisis is getting worse year on year, as the wealth inequality gap just keeps on growing, as people are getting into more and more dire straits because governments do not care about helping people when it comes to the disadvantages of capitalism, because it means that there's a few powerful people who can actually like benefit from it, and they're the ones that are funding the politicians. Again, I've talked about this before, we need to get money out of politics, big time. Us fighting each other only helps leaders get away with stuff because we're not channeling all of this anger to where it actually should be directed. And no, I don't mean in a violent way. I'm not condoning violence here at all, because I don't like that. I don't think that that's going to solve anything. I'm saying like doing the active things like I've talked about in this video here, which channels the anger in a productive way, is what we should be focusing on. This is where supporting unions matter, where joining unions matters. This is where being involved in your local community matters, where protesting matters. Getting involved in local politics and getting involved in groups that are actually helping the people that have been disenfranchised, that have been left behind, like what Adam Conover was actually talking about in this video here, as he has helped a whole bunch of houseless people. Taking this justified anger, because honestly it's justified, like with the state of the world and everything, and channeling it into doing something that's positive, as opposed to like aiming it at each other, because that's ultimately, in my opinion, not going to help us. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, instead of spinning BS, can we spin some sugar instead? Let's leave the candy floss emoji, because candy floss is one of my absolute favorite things. So much so it even featured in our wedding, and it's my birthday, like that I'm like, well, tomorrow's my birthday. I'm filming this on the 6th. And so I'm foregoing birthday celebrations in order to get this video done for you. Also because our life is very messy and chaotic at the moment, but still, I'm working very hard on this video that has genuinely been causing me nightmares. And a huge thank you to all of my patrons as always. You've all been very, very helpful when it comes to actually finding things for this video and having examples and recommending books and all of that good stuff. So it's been really great. And a special thank you to my top tier Trash Panda enablers: Alyssa Pisani, Alyssa Schmidt, Birgit Kerry Quake, Jam, Laura Bell, Mila Gautier, Stella Sapiente, Tammy Poitres, Tim Long, Tonya Banyay. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Maybe it'll be a short video, maybe it'll be a big one. I've got another huge video in the works, which I've contacted a few charities for to try and find a good way forward. So yeah, I don't know. Hey Bryony, how do you want to spend your 35th birthday? I don't know, maybe I'll just spend the whole time punishing myself with this giant video, which has been causing me heaps of stress for many months at this point and caused a lot of nightmares, and just fritter away all of my time with work constantly. That sounds like a really great plan. Gosh, I'm such a fool. Anyone that says age brings wisdom, clearly is not applying here, because I should have planned for a very easy video, which I didn't even have to think about, but no, I just want to punish myself, apparently. But anyway, hopefully you learned something new, you got something good from this, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.